Ancient Egyptian burials were carefully designed to protect the deceased and ensure a smooth journey to the afterlife. Each component of the burial played a specific role in preservation, protection, and spiritual guidance. At the heart of the burial was the mummified corpse, the preserved body of the deceased. Wrapped in linen bandages and treated with resins, mummification was essential for keeping the body intact for eternity. Embalmers meticulously removed internal organs, drying the body with natron salts to prevent decomposition. Amulets and charms were placed between the wrappings, offering protection and blessings for the afterlife. Encasing the mummy were the bandages and funerary mask, an additional layer that sometimes included a painted or gilded face resembling the deceased. This layer was essential for both physical preservation and spiritual recognition. Once embalmers wrapped the body tightly, inscriptions and protective spells were added to guard the soul and ensure its safe passage to the afterlife. In some periods, particularly during the Roman era in Egypt, mummification also included the use of mummy portraits. These were realistic painted depictions of the deceased, created on wooden panels and placed over the face of the wrapped mummy. Unlike traditional funerary masks, these portraits captured individual features with remarkable detail, blending Egyptian burial customs with Greco-Roman artistic influence. They were primarily found in sites like Fayum, leading to the term Fayum portraits. These portraits ensured the deceased's identity remained intact, allowing their soul to recognize its body in the afterlife. Some burials contained multiple coffins, depending on the period and the status of the deceased. High-ranking individuals, especially royalty and nobility, were often buried in a set of nested coffins, each offering an additional layer of protection. The inner coffin, the first actual wooden coffin, enclosed the mummy and was usually made of wood or cartonnage. It was richly decorated with inscriptions, religious texts, and symbolic artwork reinforcing beliefs in resurrection. Some were shaped to resemble the deceased, allowing their soul to recognize its body in the afterlife. Enclosing the inner coffin was the outer coffin, the largest wooden coffin, often adorned with hieroglyphs, divine imagery, and protective spells. Pharaohs and high-ranking officials sometimes had these outer coffins covered in gold leaf, signifying their royal and divine status. The inscriptions and religious symbols were meant to aid the deceased on their journey through the underworld, ensuring safe passage to the afterlife. All of these wooden coffins were then placed inside a stone sarcophagus, which was sealed with a heavy lid. This massive stone cover protected the burial from tomb robbers, environmental damage, spiritual threats, and physical decay. Many lids were inscribed with prayers, spells, and the name of the deceased to ensure their identity remained intact in the afterlife. Some featured elaborate carvings of protective deities meant to watch over the body inside. Many sarcophagi were engraved with images of Nut, the sky goddess, symbolizing her embrace as the deceased transitioned into the afterlife. The base of the sarcophagus served as the final resting place, often carved with protective spells and religious imagery. Some even contained small compartments for funerary goods or inscriptions explaining the journey to the next world. Alongside the mummified body, the Egyptians carefully preserved internal organs, believing they were essential for existence in the afterlife. These organs were stored in canopic jars, 4 intricately designed containers used to hold the embalmed stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver. Each of the 4 canopic jars was dedicated to a specific organ and protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. The Imseti jar, with a human-shaped lid, held the liver and was under the protection of the goddess Isis. The liver was important because it was believed to filter impurities from the body. The Hapi jar, which had a baboon-shaped lid, contained the lungs and was guarded by the goddess Nephthys. The lungs were preserved to maintain the breath of life in the afterlife. The Duamutef jar, topped with a jackal-shaped lid, stored the stomach and was under the protection of the goddess Neith. The stomach was crucial for digestion and sustenance in the next world. The Kebesenuef jar, with a falcon-shaped lid, held the intestines and was watched over by the goddess Serket, ensuring the organ's preservation for the afterlife. To keep these jars safe, they were housed in a canopic chest, a decorated wooden or stone container placed near the sarcophagus. This chest symbolized the unity of the body and spirit, reinforcing the idea that the deceased remained whole even in death. Some chests were elaborately painted with divine imagery and protective spells, ensuring the organs remained preserved and the spirit undisturbed. Among the preserved organs, the heart was considered the most important, as the Egyptians believed it was the seat of intelligence, emotions, and morality. It was thought to be necessary for judgment in the afterlife, where it would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at to determine the deceased's fate. The brain, however, was considered useless and was usually removed through the nose using a hooked tool before being discarded. The ancient Egyptians believed thoughts and consciousness originated from the heart rather than the brain, which explains why it was not preserved like the other organs. The heart, unlike these organs, was often left inside the body, as it was essential for the final judgment before Osiris. If the heart was missing or damaged during mummification, embalmers placed a beetle-shaped amulet known as a heart scarab. This amulet was placed inside the body as a replacement or within the tomb. Inscribed with spell 30 from the Book of the Dead, it was meant to help the deceased pass the test of the afterlife, where their heart was weighed. Every component of the burial had a role to play. Nothing was left to chance in the preparation for eternity. From the mummified corpse to the intricately nested coffins, the protective stone sarcophagus, and the sacred canopic jars, all these elements worked together to ensure the deceased's safe passage into the afterlife. But protection did not end with the burial itself. These remains were housed in pyramids, tombs, and underground chambers, depending on the status and period of the deceased. Pharaohs and high-ranking officials were laid to rest in grand tombs within the Valley of the Kings, or within pyramids, while nobles and officials were buried in rock-cut tombs, adorned with elaborate carvings and religious inscriptions. These final resting places were heavily guarded, sealed with massive stone blocks, concealed entrances, and protective curses meant to deter intruders. Priests performed rituals to maintain the tomb's sacredness, while statues, amulets, and divine texts ensured ongoing protection. The Egyptians believed that as long as the tomb remained intact, the deceased's journey through eternity would continue undisturbed. The afterlife was the ultimate goal of every Egyptian burial, a realm known as Aru, or the Field of Reeds, where the soul would live in peace, surrounded by lush fields, flowing rivers, and an abundance of food. But entry into this paradise was not guaranteed. The deceased had to pass through the Hall of Judgment, where their heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was granted eternal life in Aru. If it was heavier, corrupted by wrongdoing, it was devoured by Ammit, the soul-eating beast, and the person would cease to exist. To aid the deceased in this journey, tombs were filled with offerings, spells, and even Shabti figurines, small servant statues that would perform labor on their behalf in the afterlife. They were a symbolic workforce, ready to answer whenever the dead were summoned to work for Osiris in the Field of Reeds. Every element of the burial was designed to prepare the deceased for this final test, ensuring their transition from the mortal world to eternal existence among the gods in the paradise of Aru.